Welcome to the D Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D Shift podcast. And as we always have to do when I get to interview a fellow Canadian, I'm going to just go Canada. We always have a big celebration at the beginning. So today, I am really, like I said, I'm really happy to interview Ewa Krempa. She is not only a fellow Canadian, but she actually lives in Edmonton, Alberta. And I went to school in Sherwood Park, Alberta, when in primary school, which is just outside of Edmonton. My dad was RCMP, so we traveled around. I was just outside of Edmonton, but I spent most of my life in Red Deer. So 150 miles apart, and we never met each other. We get on the internet and we meet each other. Amazing how it works,
right? Oh my God.
So Ewa, it is actually, Ewa is a dynamic entrepreneur, mentor, coach, mindset and transformational coach based in, as we said, Alberta. With a passion for travel, Ewa has journeyed to over 50 countries, gathering colorful experiences, memories, and personal growth along the way. As the founder and CEO of Dynamic Mindset Coaching, Ewa empowers individuals to achieve holistic transformation in their lives. She is also a contributing author to Midlife Awakening and Never Give Up, which is a compilation of inspirational stories of personal transformation. So Ewa, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's definitely a pleasure to be here. So thank you so much, Mardi.
Oh, you are welcome. And let's talk a little bit about what got you here. I don't think most kids, because I'm one too, I don't think most kids grow up and go, gosh, I'd really like to be a coach, helping women get more empowered or people get more empowered. So how did you end up at this particular pathway of life?
It's a long story, but I'll try to make it short and sweet. Where should I begin? So in 2005, actually, I think that's where it was kind of born. In 2005, I ventured out with World Vision Canada to help. At that time, we were building homes for that particular project to El Salvador. I wanted to go to Africa at that time, but I guess it sold out or something like that. So I'm like, you know what? Why not go to somewhere else where, I can also help? So I ended up going to El Salvador for 2 weeks with World Vision Canada, and everybody was gathered from all over. So we all met at a hotel and we're like, oh, hello, nice to meet you. And then World Vision manager as well. And then we traveled through El Salvador for about 2 weeks, and then we stopped at different communities, and then we stopped, I think, for 5 days at a particular one. That's where we built a home. And I was sitting there, it's like, this is amazing because, I love to travel, and that's another story. But at the same time, I wanted to help people. And I said, well, this is a nice way going there. It was definitely a huge eye-opener for me on many levels, not only because it was first ever trip for myself to do something. Nobody in my family does these kind of things. So they were like, well, why are you wasting your money or things like that? And I'm like, you know what? It's my money. This is what I want to spend it on. And I want to go and do something I feel passionate about. And as I went into that, I had even more passion. And there was this little girl, her name was Edith, that I met at one of the communities. Because for those who don't know, when we go on these trips, we actually have portfolios of the families we are going to meet. And then our job later is to be that ambassador and find sponsors for them. But in that instant, this girl was so darn cute. I was like, you know what? I'm going to sponsor you right now. And my manager's like, are you sure? This is a big commitment. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't be saying it otherwise. So all of a sudden I became a sponsor. So I did meet her on the spot. It was like, she was so cute and I just couldn't resist. So So ended up sponsoring her for 7 years because that was the length of the project. And what it means by sponsoring, when I came back to Canada, it was monthly fees I would pay, plus we would have exchange letters and stuff like that, so you can see your child's growth and everything. So it was really nice. And I think within a month after coming back, I sponsored another child, but in a different continent. So that's what I was doing, and I always wanted to do that. It was a big passion for mine, but as didn't quite know how at that time. I mean, I knew the trips. So I tagged along for a few more years, but there were certain things in my childhood, and divorce, of course, happened, and a few other things that in 2018, my daughter came into life. And at that time, I stepped into personal development within I think less than 2 years, because I was like, you know what? I want to really clean up myself as a person, be happier, be more joyful. I don't want to bring this child to the world and feel like I have all these unfinished things in my mind and stuff like that. So personal development started for me in 2021 when I went back into deep dive into it, because originally I actually stepped into law of attraction in 2006, when was the first time I actually saw The Secret, and it was actually my ex-mother-in-law that introduced me to it. There's a story behind that too. She's like, you're a little bit negative, maybe, this would help you, and maybe you can attract more things. And that time I actually used a lot of The Secret to attract more traveling into my life, because it brought me joy every time I traveled. I connected with a lot of people, but the rest of the stuff just stayed behind, kind of thing. So it wasn't until 2021 that I actually used the law of attraction to help me rebuild the mindset, transform my life, and things like that. So that's how I got into from there to here. So there's a lot of stories in between. That's why, believe me, we could sit here the whole day.
And sometimes, when I ask that question, I honestly realize I'm asking people to compact sometimes 10, 15, 20, 30 years into like 2 minutes. Please tell me your life in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
I completely understand that. So,
yeah.
but now, Eva, what you focus on is really helping people make that same transformation. Is that,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that role.
So, yes. So, because like I mentioned, many things happen along the way in my life, and that's 20, 30 years. And of course, see, I come from a village back home. It's gonna sound old, but it's been a couple decades here and there. So what happens? We don't study law of attraction back then. It was like, what's law of attraction, right? And in 1993, I moved to Canada. So that was where my whole world was kind of really shooken up, because I came to Canada, I spoke no English, first of all. So I knew maybe music and hello, maybe. I kid you not. And so for me, it was like I was 12 and a half. So when I moved here, no English, most of family back home. I felt lonely. I was, yeah, it's a big city. It was exciting, but at the same time scary, as. And so I really didn't like it for the first 5 years in Canada. I really didn't. It was so hard for me. I actually did run away from home. I went into depression. I went through a lot of things. And this is where all that's coming from. Not only that, but then you have no friends. So, and you feel like you can't really talk to anybody. And the mentality from coming from, Europe back home, it's like, well, you know what, suck it up, move on. And so, because it was so hard for me to go through the emotions, I started compressing everything down, because I didn't want to feel it anymore. I said, you know what? If I can't chop through it, I'll just compress it. Then I'll be just numb and I won't feel anything. Well, it sounds easy at that time to a point, until years later, when you actually want to release all that, it comes up because you're storing it actually. And that's where the holistic part. we don't realize how much of that stuff, because I'm sensitive, right? It's how much the body actually takes abuse from that. So I went through kidney stones, I went through my migraine headaches, you name it, I've had it almost, right? So when I started digging up all that stuff in 2001, when I started taking Bob Proctor's course, believe me, it wasn't easy. I cried, I laughed, I hated myself, I loved myself, but I let it all go. And that's what I was saying earlier, when I started working on myself in personal development, I really started working on myself, right? So then I felt so light. I released it. But I mean, we don't always release it fully. Sometimes it takes layers because you've compressed it for so long. It takes time to release that. And you release one layer, you think it's done, then something triggers it, and it's like, oh, there's a little bit more left, you know. And in 2005 or 6, I married. And everything was going well, you know. He was a great guy, you know, everything was going good. But at the same time, you know, I didn't have everything I wanted in that marriage. And then, you know, we wanted to have a baby naturally, and we kind of were, the funds weren't really there. So everything was started crumbling all of a sudden. We're like, ugh. And then I felt like I wasn't really as much in love as I thought I was, right? So, and he really wanted to have a baby. I'm like, ugh, I don't know if it's a good time, you know, we're not really. And then I asked my husband then, I said, look, do you mind if I go traveling? We need to really clear my head. And I had a huge passion for travel by that time. And I was like, I said, so do you mind? So you know what I did? I ended up going on Google. I applied for cruise ship job. I was like, you sure you're okay with that if I get the job? Oh, yeah, yeah, no problem. I'm like, well, you're a great husband to see me gone for that many months, right? So behold, within a month, I got visas, all the papers ready. I was departing on a brand new voyage of my life. And I was like, okay, let's do this. But I had no idea what I was getting myself into. It was one of the experience, like you just don't know what to expect. You just flew yourself over to
Right.
UK because I was working for the Cunard line in the UK, but we traveled around you know, Europe, here, Caribbean, but then we did a huge world tour. I come back, you know, and we talked a little bit throughout that time I was away. I'm like, hey, husband, how's it going? You know, this and that. Good, you know, and I was coming back. I was excited. You know, I had time to think. He had time to think. I was like, okay, let's make it work, right? I come back off the ship. We meet up, you know, because we kind of took time apart.
Sure.
Yeah. And then within 2 weeks, I honestly don't know to today. Within 2 weeks, it was 180 degrees. It's like, no, we're not gonna be together. I don't know. It was 180 turn. I didn't even expect, because my intention was to stay together, make it work. But the universe, I guess, had the different plans, as they say. So I said, you know what? Instead of making this an ugly divorce, you know, let's do it the easy way. You know what? I don't want anything from you. You're okay. It's not like we had big properties or anything like that, but we had stuff still. He's like, okay, let's just end it peacefully and go our separate way. Because, you know, honestly, I fell out of love. I
Yeah.
hate to say it, but sometimes things happen, right? So I was like, so we parted. It took maybe 6 months to almost a year with the paperwork and things like that. But we ended up on a good note. Mind you, I haven't seen him since, even though he said we'll keep in touch. But you know, I'm happy because it wasn't an ugly divorce. It's just we went our separate ways. So, fast forward, you know, to now, I had actually had a chance to really reflect on how things happen, why they happen, and things like that. So, sorry, any questions? I know I just go off.
No, no, no. I think this is really good because I think, you know, the fact that you use that time away to really think about the relationship, and then that you both were able to say it's not working, let's not cause conflict and let's just part company. I think that's so positive. And then you've gone on now and created this amazing life that you're doing exactly what you wanted to do.
Yes, I mean, you know, in our culture, we do grow up, we get married, and it's not really our culture expects us to, once you marry for life. But being here, it wasn't an easy pill to swallow for my parents that I wanted the divorce. But hey, why stay in a marriage you're not happy? Might as well give ourselves a favor. And we tried a little bit of counseling and all that, of course. But it's just at the end, it's just like it's not what the heart wanted anymore, and I had
Right.
to be okay with that. Honestly, what I did a lot is I actually meditated. I said, look, God, if this isn't meant for me anymore, send me a sign. And that's exactly what I had. I had a sign that says, you know what, you're okay to go separate ways. And I'm like, okay, well, this is it. But what happened later when I went into personal development, actually, that's also when I reflected why I married. Did I actually marry, and you know what I realized that I'm married because at that time, it has nothing to do with him, but it had everything actually to do with me. I settled in one way. He was a great guy, but I settled. I said, oh, you know what? This is as good as it gets. He's nice, you're nice, just get married. Everything will be fine. But I knew when I was coming down the aisle just before, I was like, this isn't 100%. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, but you know what? Everybody's here. And I say that for a reason. I said, well, everybody's there sitting, everything's paid for, and you're about to walk. Then you know what? Might as well just do it. But I knew it wasn't right 100%, yet I still did it. And why I say that? Because a lot of times we do things in our life that we're not 100% for it, but we still do it because we're in that crunch or something like that.
Right.
So when I
Right.
reflect, I'm like, that was my error right there. I went through something that wasn't 100%. And I tell this to my students and clients. I use a pair of shoes always. They laugh at me because I say, you go to the store, you're buying a pair of shoes. It's maybe 100%. They're like, it's just a pair of shoes. You take it home and then just as you're buying it, 2 days later, you're gonna return it. And this is where you really have to follow, your instincts. And it's like, why do it in the first place? You
Right.
know, but we do it anyhow because we're creatures of habit for the most part, right? So now when I use that, they laugh at me. I said, but it's a good example because you're not going the path you should be. You still do it. And 2 days later, a week later, you're like, shoes is easy to return, but a husband isn't, right?
Well, that's so true. But the other thing that I think is really important in that story, both in your personal story and the buying the shoe story, is that so many people really don't understand what their values are and what they want. They just know what they don't want, or they just know that something's not right, but they don't know what is right. And that's one of the things you help your people, is to get that real alignment with themselves, so that then they know if they're buying the right shoes or picking the right spouse or whatever, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't about that too. It was a lot more. For example, by choosing it, this is as good as it gets. That came also from low self-confidence back then. I was very shy. I was afraid of my own shadow when I was in high school. Believe me, when I knew I had to do a paper in front of the class, I knew if I knew it, I would just not show up for the class. I'd rather take a zero. I was so shy, so afraid, so no confidence. So when I was marrying because I was like, well, who's gonna want me? I'm not good enough for this guy wants me, so I'll just go there. So it was a lot of different things, but because I didn't believe in myself, my confidence wasn't where it should have. So I took that kind of, you could say, in some way, easy way out. It's a wrong word, but that's the best I can come up right now. So that's what I'm saying. Like when you're gonna go do something, make sure you follow your heart properly. Make sure you're actually in alignment what you want to do, not do it because somebody else wants you to do it. And I see that so much now. Oh well, they want me to do it, so I'll do it. Well, no. Do you want it? You're the
Right.
one who has to live with it later. Like my mom used to say, how you make your bed, that's how you sleep in it. It's the
Right.
same with life. um you really have to be in true alignment. I mean, yeah, things will happen, error sometimes, but sometimes we have to learn. But I knew that time what I was about to do didn't resonate with me 100%, yet I still did it,
And
and we
you know,
do
it
that
does
a lot.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it doesn't even have to be in relationships, because I can't tell you how many people I have talked to, of course, over the last 40 years, have said, I have a degree in, name it, whatever, engineering, education, law, whatever. And they say, but I knew about in second year, I didn't want to be a teacher, an engineer, a lawyer, but I was already halfway through, and what the heck, it was a job. So
Yeah.
I went ahead and completed the degree. But then,
Yeah.
they've never used it, and they didn't, but they knew in their heart that was not where they were supposed to be.
Yeah, right. So exactly that's exactly what I'm saying. Like we do so many things we're not in alignment with. I was working in a warehouse for 10 years almost. And I kind of left cold turkey 2 years ago. I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. It was like a wall was there. It's like I can't do this anymore. And at first it was scary to leave a 9 to 5 job and be like, but now it's like I'm so glad I did it. I'm following my passion finally, doing what I want to do, inspire people, and stuff like that. And that's why now I actually finally like went even more deeper into who I am as a person and really sat down and it's like, who is Eva? What does she truly want? So yeah, I've traveled the world. I've been to amazing places. I've dined at beautiful restaurants. I've done a lot of things, right? And I'm like, well, I guess, but now it's like, oh no, wait, I can do so much more now. Even though, my daughter's only 5 years old, but just endless possibilities all the time. And the more I dive into it, like I'm now 2 times international bestseller. Another book is coming out in August, and I'm working on a brand new book, actually very dear to my heart, and it's called actually Footprints Around the World, Adventures in Travel and Inspiration. So if anybody wants to jump on that, you're welcome. But you just don't know where it's gonna take you now when you actually open your heart and stop being in that, like a shell. I was in a shell for a very, very long time. And at first, you're like, feel comfortable, then you feel uncomfortable, then you're like, you know what? You just want to grow because your soul wants to grow.
Yeah.
And when we keep pushing it down, you're just gonna get depressed and everything. You know, it, do I wish sometimes things were different? Yes. Because who doesn't want to be just born, have a beautiful, perfect family, perfect husband, all those kids, but if everybody was that way, life also would be boring because you just see like, but the experiences have happened. They've taught me a lesson. And now when I align more with who I am, the choices become easier and much easier to live with,
Well,
going forward. And I can share with others, yeah, I hate to say it. I've tried a lot of things, done a lot, skydiving, traveling, divorce, kid. Yeah, I have a lot of experiences, but now I use it as a tool to help others, and stuff like that. So it's been an amazing journey.
yeah, and I was going to say, I think for women and men, but because I know there's mostly women listening, having that alignment and being passionate about what you do, that's important, because you know what? Your kids look at you and go, wow, mom really loves what she does. I mean, I'm a lot older than you, Eva, but when I can remember even hearing from my mom, like basically, well, you can be a teacher, you can be a nurse, you can work in a store, but there was never like, you can be a coach, you can be an entrepreneur, you can travel the world. Yeah, they would say that, but that really wasn't a possibility. It wasn't really a possibility. But
Yeah.
now, I mean, imagine your daughter growing up and seeing her mom doing all these fantastic things. She has the sky's the limit now, literally, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And the thing is, yeah, it kind of opens your mind to do other things. Like, I mean, not everybody's going to be on the same level. So, of course, you're still going to have people working at McDonald's. You're still going to have people doing other jobs because they're in a different awareness than perhaps we are. But that doesn't make them any, less. It's just that they choose that stuff. I choose to do something else. And not once you see something and you know the possibilities, so it's almost
Well,
impossible to go back once you know
yeah.
something.
Once you find like whether it's travel, whether it's knitting, whether it's volunteering, whether it is going back to school or learning a new language. I mean, it doesn't have to be stuff that costs you money. It can just be you all of a sudden discover you have a passion for gardening. Go out there and garden. Find time. Yeah, exactly. I love this.
Yeah, I never thought 2 years, well, actually just last year, I never thought I would actually be an author in collaboration books, though I did always want to write something when I finished my traveling in 2010, but that book is still sitting on my hard drive because I just quite didn't know how to put it out there. And I didn't know the story I wanted to tell with the travel. But when I went into personal development, I kind of put all the dots together. That's your question at the beginning. Well, how did you come up that? Well, it started in 2005. And then, seeing all these things, seeing inspire movies, you want to inspire. It's like, that's something I like to do.
Right.
And then going forward now, it's like, wow, I can actually be a coach. The shy girl from, that was afraid to do presentations at school. I laugh at, I told this story to somebody the other day. I don't know if my teacher is listening or not, but it's funny. So I had all my schools done to graduate for grade 12, but I took some extra courses and I took social studies. But this was the higher social studies, and I wasn't smart at politics. I was like, politics is just like, but I said, I'll sit there. So, back, we have these journals when you have the political part where you have to okay, look at the cartoon and tell me what you think. So I submitted the paper on that. He calls me over and he's like, Eva, yeah, can you do me a favor? I'm like, sure. Can you not show up for my class anymore? I'm like, done. It was so bad. The teacher was like, you got enough credits. Just do yourself a favor. Don't go into politics. I'm like, no problem, done. So I remember that, it's just funny.
Eva, thank you. That was a great way to end this up because with a little bit of a laugh here. When you think back of everything we've discussed, because we've covered a lot of stuff and a lot of really important stuff about alignment, about growing, about personal development, what do you think is the most important thing?
Follow your heart. No matter what, follow your heart. Of course, like when you're teenage and stuff like that, there's, certain boundaries, of course, based on age too. But for the most part, really know yourself before you do something. Don't do it because somebody said so, or you should do it because the society does it. Do what's right for you and be in that alignment. And if you don't know, then, meditate on it. Take some time, sometimes, you have to do something fast, but hopefully you're aligned with what you want to do. And the more you listen to your intuition, your heart, that's why we all have all these senses, all these things to listen to ourselves. Everything we need is within us. But you know what? It took me a long time to realize that. I was always looking for the outside sources and everything else. Why never really pay attention to me and myself? Once you learn more about yourself and who you truly are, things become so much easier.
Thank you for that. That's an important statement right there. Eva, if people want to reach out and find out more about what you do or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Would be through my Linktree, because it's my connection hub for everything, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, how to become an author, want to purchase my books on Amazon and things like that. Everything is on there.
Great. And I will make sure, because Linktree addresses are a little wild and wacky to try to remember and state them. So I'm going to put everything in the show notes. So anybody who wants to reach Eva in any way, just go click on that Linktree and you will get it will pop up a whole bunch of different things. And you pick the ones that are of interest to you and the way that you want to connect with her. So Eva, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and for telling us your story. I love these stories of people that have made these incredible changes in their life.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I wish everybody a wonderful day.
Thank you. And thank you for listening to another episode of the podcast. And don't forget to tune in again next week for another D-Shift episode. Thanks for listening and supporting the D-Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D-Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.